In the late summer of 1862, the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, commanded by General Robert E. Lee, crossed the Potomac River into Maryland. This audacious move marked the Confederacy's first major invasion of the North. Lee's objectives were manifold: to provision his army from the rich farmlands of the North, to rally pro-Confederate Marylanders to his cause, and to potentially threaten major northern cities. He hoped a significant victory on Union soil would shatter Northern morale and persuade European powers, particularly Great Britain and France, to grant the Confederacy diplomatic recognition. The Army of the Potomac, under the cautious command of Major General George B. McClellan, was tasked with repelling this invasion. McClellan, though a brilliant organizer, was often hesitant to commit his forces to battle, a trait that frequently frustrated President Abraham Lincoln. D. As Lee's army moved deeper into Maryland, a stroke of incredible fortune befell the Union. On September 13th, a Union soldier discovered a copy of Lee's Special Order 191 wrapped around 3 cigars. This order detailed the entirety of Lee's audacious plan, revealing that he had divided his smaller army into several widely separated columns. It was a strategic blueprint of the enemy's intentions, an intelligence coup of the highest order. McClellan, now possessing what he called the Lost Order, had a golden opportunity to isolate and destroy Lee's scattered forces. However, his characteristic caution led him to delay, taking a full 18 hours to act on this critical intelligence. This delay gave Lee precious time to learn of the discovery and begin concentrating his beleaguered army near the small town of Sharpsburg, Maryland. Lee chose a strong defensive position, with his back to the Potomac River and his flanks anchored by Antietam Creek. By September 16th, the two armies were converging, the stage being set for a monumental and bloody confrontation. The air grew thick with tension as soldiers on both sides understood the impending clash would be of immense significance. The dawn of September 17th, 1862, broke with a heavy mist hanging over the fields and woods around Sharpsburg. The battle began at first light, around 5:30 a.m., with a massive artillery barrage from the Union side. Major General Joseph Hooker's I Corps launched the initial assault from the north, advancing through a large cornfield owned by David Miller. Here, they met the entrenched Confederate forces under the command of General Stonewall Jackson. The fighting in what would become known as the cornfield was savage and unrelenting. One survivor would later say that the corn was cut down as cleanly as if by a knife. Control of the 20-acre field swayed back and forth between the two sides for hours. Regiments were decimated in minutes, the lines of blue and gray mingling in a whirlwind of death. The sheer volume of lead that flew through the air was staggering. Hooker's corps suffered immense casualties and was eventually forced to fall back. The Union 12th Corps under Joseph Mansfield then entered the fray, renewing the assault. Mansfield himself was mortally wounded shortly after leading his men into action. The fighting spread to the nearby east and west woods, and around a small, whitewashed Dunker church. This church, a place of peace for a local German Baptist sect, became the epicenter of unimaginable violence. By mid-morning, the northern sector of the battlefield was a stalemate, a landscape of carnage and exhaustion. The focus of the battle then shifted to the center of the Confederate line. Here, Confederate troops under General D.H. Hill had taken up a strong defensive position in a sunken farm lane. For nearly 4 hours, this sunken road would be the scene of some of the most ferocious fighting of the war. Union divisions from the two corps launched a series of determined, but uncoordinated, assaults against this position. The Confederates, protected by the road's high banks, poured a devastating fire into the advancing Union ranks. The Irish Brigade, in particular, distinguished itself with a courageous but costly charge. The bodies of the fallen began to pile up so thickly that the lane would forever be known as Bloody Lane. Eventually, a Union flanking maneuver and a misunderstanding of orders caused the Confederate line to collapse. The Union forces had a momentary opportunity to break the center of Lee's army and win a decisive victory. However, a lack of fresh troops and McClellan's inherent caution prevented a full exploitation of the breakthrough. The fighting in the center subsided, leaving behind a scene of unparalleled horror. The final phase of the battle took place on the southern end of the field, near a stone bridge over Antietam Creek. Major General Ambrose Burnside's East Corps was tasked with capturing this bridge and striking the Confederate right flank. The bridge, later named Burnside's Bridge, was defended by only a few hundred Georgian riflemen. They held a commanding position on a high bluff overlooking the bridge and its approaches. For 3 hours, Burnside's much larger force launched repeated, futile frontal assaults on the bridge. The narrow span became a deadly bottleneck, with Union soldiers being cut down in droves. Finally, around 1:00 p.m., a Union charge, combined with a flanking maneuver that found a nearby ford, succeeded in capturing the bridge. It took another 2 hours for Burnside to reorganize his corps and begin his advance toward Sharpsburg. Just as it seemed the Confederate right flank was about to collapse, salvation arrived for Lee's army. General A.P. Wood, Hill's Light Division, having completed a grueling 17-mile forced march from Harper's Ferry, slammed into Burnside's exposed left flank. The sudden, ferocious counterattack stunned the Union troops, who had believed the day was nearly won. Burnside's advance was halted, and his men were driven back towards the very bridge they had fought so hard to take. As the sun began to set, the fighting sputtered to a close across the entire battlefield. The fields and woods around Sharpsburg fell silent, replaced by the cries of the wounded. Neither side had won a clear tactical victory, but both had suffered losses on an almost unimaginable scale. 17th of September, 1862, would go down in history as the single bloodiest day in American history. The total casualties for both armies were nearly 23,000 killed, wounded or missing. This was more than all the American casualties in the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, and Mexican-American War combined. The following day, September 18th, the two armies remained in place, glaring at each other across the fields of dead. McClellan, despite having fresh reserves that Lee lacked, declined to renew the assault. That night, under the cover of darkness, Lee's battered army of Northern Virginia began its retreat back across the Potomac River into Virginia. Though tactically a draw, the Battle of Antietam was a crucial strategic victory for the Union. Lee's first invasion of the North had been repulsed, and the threat to Washington, D.C. was averted. The victory, however tenuous, gave President Lincoln the political standing he needed to issue a transformative decree. 5 days after the battle, on September 22nd, 1862, he issued the Preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. This proclamation declared that if the Southern states did not cease their rebellion by January 1, 1863, all of their slaves would be thenceforward and forever free. Even so, it fundamentally changed the nature of the war, transforming it from a conflict to preserve the Union into a revolutionary struggle for human freedom. The battle also had significant international repercussions. The Confederate defeat at Antietam convinced the governments of Great Britain and France to postpone any plans to recognize the Confederacy. The chance for foreign intervention, which the South had desperately sought, was lost forever. For the soldiers who fought there, the memories of Antietam would never fade. The names of its landmarks, the cornfield, the West Woods, Bloody Lane, Burnside's Bridge, were seared into the national consciousness. The battle was a brutal lesson in the changing nature of warfare, where improved rifle technology made frontal assaults against entrenched positions nearly suicidal. It was a day of incredible bravery and sacrifice on both sides. It was also a day of tactical blunders and missed opportunities, particularly on the part of the Union command. President Lincoln, deeply dissatisfied with McClellan's failure to pursue and destroy Lee's army after the battle, would relieve him of command just a few weeks later. The war would continue for 2.5 more bloody years. Antietam marked a crucial turning point. It halted the Confederate momentum, provided the platform for emancipation, and reshaped the moral and political landscape of the conflict. The sun rose over a field shrouded in mist. Soldiers in blue uniforms advanced through the tall corn. The sound of cannons shattered the morning calm. Stonewall Jackson's men waited behind a wooden fence. The fighting in the cornfield was a brutal, swirling melee. Control of the ground shifted with each charge and countercharge. The Westwoods became a place of terror and confusion. Small Dunker Church stood as a silent witness. By midday, the battle moved towards the center. A sunken farm road provided a natural trench for the Confederates. Union soldiers charged across the open field towards the road. The defenders unleashed a devastating volley of fire. The Irish Brigade had advanced with their green flags flying. The road filled with the fallen, earning its grim name. Confederate misunderstanding led to a sudden retreat. The Union center had broken through, a chance for victory. But the attack stalled for want of fresh troops. The afternoon's fight centered on a stone bridge. Burnside's corps was ordered to take the bridge. A few hundred Georgians defended the heights above it. Repeated Union charges were repulsed with heavy losses. The bridge became a fatal funnel for the attackers. Finally, the bridge was taken after hours of struggle. Burnside's men pushed on towards the town of Sharpsburg. Suddenly, A.P. Hill's division arrived from Harper's Ferry. Surprise attack shattered the Union flank. The Union advance was thrown back in confusion. As dusk fell, the sounds of battle faded away. The cries of the wounded filled the night air. The day ended in a bloody stalemate. It was the single deadliest day in the nation's history. Nearly 23,000 men were lost. The next day, the armies watched each other in silence. Close range. A lull in the fighting brought a deafening silence. Water from canteens was more precious than gold. The charge across Burnside's bridge was a test of courage. The arrival of Hill's men was a pivotal moment. The setting sun seemed to weep for the fallen. Surgeons worked tirelessly through the night. The battle's end brought no celebration, only relief. The news of the battle spread slowly through the nation. For many families, the news would be devastating. The Emancipation Proclamation gave the war a new, higher purpose. The ground at Sharpsburg became hallowed soil.